Hi. Welcome back to Story Time with Dr. Bird. We are doing some reading from the book of Leviticus today, chapters 18 and 20. We'll focus on one and maybe read through briefly the other. I'm really happy that I didn't throw everybody. Martin, I did think about you. I'll be honest. I thought about who's in the European, who's on the European continent, who's joined us in the past, and wondering if you'd still be up for it. I am touched that you are still here and joining us, at least for a little bit. I know that there are others from various parts of the world who join us or watch later. So I am sorry for changing the time. And it's we had some things related to moving that just needed to happen. So it was easier for me to push it out an hour and not stress about it, so that I'm here and looking forward to it and not frazzled. And so that's what we're doing today. So it is Thursday, August 8th, and a couple things. Just want to reiterate again. I'm so thankful for you all. I'm thankful that there's some folks who want to be here live. I'm grateful that some of you want to be here live and just can't, and so you watch it later. And actually, many people do. And I love it when you share your favorite video with a friend, or tell someone new about what it is I'm doing on this channel. The word of mouth is essential for me. So I am grateful for all of that. I'm grateful for people who support me financially in all kinds of ways, as Patreons, as purchasing the Audible version of my second book, Permission Granted, Take the Bible into Your Own Hands. I am grateful for people who feel like throwing something in for Super Chat. I'm just grateful for all of it. And I hear from you all individually every now and then. Sometimes someone sends me an email, just some little plug about something helpful that I've said, something helpful for them about what I'm doing here. So I just hold on to those, because I just know that that's happening, and that's why I do what I do, right? So I'm grateful to you all for being here, because you are why I'm doing this. So thank you. Now, before we start today's content, I want to do a quick explanation about Thursday. So I might have even said today's Thursday. It's been a long couple of weeks. Today is Tuesday, not Thursday. And so on Thursday, the 10th of August, I will not be live on my channel. I'll be live on Tim Whitaker's channel, or the New Evangelicals channel. So let me go ahead and share that link here. I have it in the description for today. I'm not quite sure how to do something on my channel that's actually going live on someone else's. So I'll do the best I can to connect somehow, but would love it if you just share the word. So the link to Thursday's stream is available in the description already for today, for this recording, for this live stream. And I will have it on my Facebook page. If there's a way for me to do an announcement or something on my YouTube channel, I'll do that. I have it shared. Well, he has it shared in Instagram and probably TikTok. And I don't know if he's done TikTok. That's not true. I know he has it shared on Instagram. So anyway, I'm trying to spread the word. Very excited. So let me show you briefly. So let's do a share, just to click over, share screen. Let's go over to, so what we're doing on Thursday is Tim reached out to me when he first, so this is Tim over here on the right. That's a fun picture of him. This is, if you don't know, and for some of you, these people well, because you came from an evangelical location, culture or experiences. This is Sean McDowell, who is Josh McDowell's son. This is Preston Sprinkle, who is a biblical scholar. I think he might be Second Temple Judaism, something like that. I'm not sure what his PhD is in, but it is biblical, because he does work with both primary Christian testaments. That's me on the left. I need an updated picture. I got to be honest. I actually asked the guy he had photoshopped some of my wrinkles away, and I asked him to undo that. I'm not afraid of getting old. I want to look real. Anyway, that picture makes me a little uncomfortable, because I look a lot older than that now. So anyway, but that's us. That's the do you really want a biblical marriage? These two guys, the McDowell and Sprinkle, both say that there's the main idea is, they say that where'd I go? the historic Christian view of sex or marriage in the Bible is one particular thing, and they define that as ordained by God from the very beginning of Scripture, and they focus in on sex differences. That's kind of the thing they choose to pin their whole stance on the issue on, so that when you see in Genesis 1 and 2 there was male and female, and then they have imported into their translation marriage language, right? So then they talk about marriage having been ordained by God from the beginning as requiring sex difference. That's their primary hook, and they read everything through that lens. And so they're very kind. They do a very respectful job, I think, of engaging biblical scholars, the ones that they do engage. And so it'll be a really fun conversation. We're going to respectfully, in return, engage them and push back on what they have said about what they believe, and then what I think, from a more informed perspective, the Bible actually says about marriage. And so that's all I'll say about that. But it'll be the same time that I usually do my live stream here. So it'll be start at 3 p.m. Central Eastern, and we're expecting it to take about 2 hours. And so that is happening Thursday. And just saw what Miss Seaside Hill was. He's a doll. He is just lovely as well. Very smart and very caring. And I don't know if you know about Tim Whitaker and his journey, his story. He actually just signed a book deal. I'm very happy for him on that, with Erdman's, to tell his story. Also, primarily to tell the story of the New Evangelicals, but it also includes his own story. He's a drummer in a Christian worship band. I don't know the whole story. I just know that all of a sudden he started paying attention to, in particular, the last few years, Christian nationalism and Christian supremacy, white supremacy, all those pieces. And in particular was like, yeah, I kind of like people who are LGBTQ identified, and I'm not sure that I like what the church I've been a part of is doing with that. So he is still evangelical, but he's bringing critical thinking to the way he reads the Bible, and therefore the way he thinks about theology. And so that's right in my wheelhouse. I'm thrilled to have conversations with him anytime I can. So anyway, that's Tim Whitaker, the New Evangelicals. Check them out if you haven't, if you're interested in all that kind of stuff. So Thursday, same time, slightly different place. Anyway, so there we go. And Preston Sprinkle just came out with a book about what the Bible says about same-sex marriage. And of course, he is not affirming, and I am. And my book is about to come out in a couple months. So this is great timing for all of us. I'm going to show, I'm going to shift gears now. I'm trying to not linger so long at the beginning like I have tended in the past, because I don't, for whatever reason. But we do have very generous, thank you, super chat. My first glance at this, I'm so concerned that I might not have help here. Any book recommendations about the Canaanite god El? I'd like to compare him with the Hebrew god. El evidently was a storm god. God appears from the windstorm in Job, the oldest Hebrew book. Sounds connected. I would agree that they're connected. I don't know. I'm not sure that I would say that Job is actually the oldest Hebrew book. It is actually one of the later ones. Not one of the younger ones. It's one of the younger ones, so later in time. But most definitely El and Baal, both Canaanite gods, are drawn upon for the description or characterization of gods, the two different names of God, primary names of God in the Hebrew Bible. I will make a note, Constellation Pegasus, and I lost my notepad, and see if I can get back to you on that. If I do, I can put it in the notes. So book on, if I don't make a note now, I will forget. So Canaanite god El, and I'll see what I can come up with. And not my typical wheelhouse, but I bet if I go do a search in the right place, I can find something for you. So thanks for that. Ray Rodriguez. Oh, see, I appreciate that. You're switching gears for us. I appreciate that, Ray. In Leviticus 18:22, Living Letter translation says homosexual. Is that what it actually says? Or is somebody saying the commentary on that passage is homosexuality is absolutely forbidden. Okay, so what we're going to need to do now, something slightly different. I want to ask you all to come up with what you've heard about Leviticus 18 and 20. So many of you know 18:22, as Ray just quoted for us, and 20 verse 13. Those are the two times, and those are the one time in each chapter where you shall not lie with a man as you lay with a woman, or with the male as you lay with a woman. But also just those two chapters in general. I don't mean just those two verses. I mean Leviticus 18 and 20. I'd like everyone to take a moment right now. What do you associate with those two chapters? What is your experience with that? Like what's going on there? And I'd like to ask you all to reflect on it for just a couple moments. And if you're comfortable with it, putting that, whatever those kind of first couple thoughts are, putting that in the chat for me. Because it's killing me to not get to ask you all what in live. It's really killing me to not have actual live conversations with you all. And I just realized I need to change one little setting somewhere, but it might not work since we're live right now. So I will do that. Yep. Oh, shoot. It was going to work. Okay. It's about being on top. Okay. Thank you. Please bring it. What are your thoughts about these two chapters, Leviticus 18 and 20? Please share it in the chat. What you've heard. Again, not just 18:22 and chapter 20, verse 13. I mean the whole chapter. What is the point of those two chapters? What do they, what are those two chapters about? Do you have a sense of what those two chapters are about? Were you taught, for instance, that those were chapters talking about marriage? Were you told those are about relationships? Like, what were you told, or what has been your sense of those two chapters? Does that make sense? What I'm looking for here? Let's see, really quick. Let's see if I can do this really quick. And then I'll get back over to showing you the other thing. And this is slightly awkward. Sorry about that. Okay. That, save. And then we'll be back live. Sorry about that. Had to do a quick little. Okay. All right. So what I'd like to do now is I'm going to, before we talk about it, before we read through and talk about it, I want to share a quick little video. So this is 2023. So I have been working on the topic of marriage in the Bible since focused way since 2012, but prior to that as well. And since 2012, I've been trying to figure out, how do I help in particular? It's not that these are the only people who would learn from this or who could learn from this, but in particular, how do I help faith communities who want to know what to do with the Bible on this topic? How do I help them work through what the Bible does and does not say, and then give them a way to process it for themselves and figure out what to do with it? Like, that's been my primary goal outside of the jobs that are trying to pay the bills. So that primary goal isn't making me any money, but it's a really important conversation to me. And it's very important, because anyway, it's very important to me. So I've been working extra hard to make these things happen. So I did a seminar weekend where I went to a UCC congregation, and we did kind of a weekend seminar. It was Friday night conversations, and then most of the day Saturday working through really important passages related to this conversation to help people who were affirming know what to do with these big relatively problematic passages. And I realized it's too much to do in a weekend. So I'm going to create a video series. And so the video series is something that groups of people get together once a week, or whenever, how often you want to do it, every 2 weeks, once a month, whatever. I had kind of church people in mind getting together to do this, but It's for groups. And I created this series. It's called Marriage in the Bible, a discussion among friends. And I did the recording, did all the, like, paid, a small amount of money, which was a fortune to me at the time, to have people do it professionally and professionally edit and all that stuff. So, and then that was the fall of 2019, and it was done spring of 2020. Well, we all know it happened in 2020. Promoting a video series was just not on anyone's radar. Survival was. Comforting people who were grieving was what pastors needed. They didn't need input on how to handle the Bible and homosexuality. So anyway, so that's where these clips come from. So I want to share this clip with you, which is from one of the chapters in my book are parallel the videos. So I created the videos first, and then I did a deep dive on each video in creating each chapter, right? So this is kind of like the Cliff's Notes or Monarch Notes or whatever, the Spark Notes, whatever the current version of that is, version of the chapters, each of the chapters. If you watch the whole video, these are just clips of the video, so it's not the whole thing. So you'll get an idea. And this particular clip comes from the video titled Matriarchs, Patriarchs, Laws, and Adultery. So in that chapter, is chapter 6. So the first 4 chapters, we talk about the four passages that people use to define biblical marriage. And then chapter 5 is about terminology, which is stunningly important. It's not just that man and woman, it's not just that we shouldn't see husband and wife anywhere, though I don't think we should. And it's not just that we shouldn't see the verb marry anywhere in the Hebrew Bible, but though that's important, but it's also about some other things, about language around this concept of marrying. It's also addresses the issue of the language, the terminology of virgin. I know I've talked about some of this stuff before, but just it's never hurts to reiterate some of this, and some of you might not have heard it before. So video 6 then is about matriarchs, patriarchs, laws, and adultery. What do the stories about the matriarchs and patriarchs tell us about what marriage actually looked like in the Bible? These are the important forefathers and mothers of Jewish, Christian, and Islamic faith. What kinds of behaviors were they getting away with or doing that people are reading about, for the last 3 millennia, whatever, 2.5? What are people having demonstrated for them? What kinds of things do people have to find a way to navigate or make excuses for or something? So that's what this, and then also it looks in that chapter in the book and also in the video, we look at some of the laws, specifically in Leviticus, but also elsewhere, but just in the Hebrew Bible. And then adultery. What is adultery about? Why is it a problem, biblically speaking? It is not because someone is cheating on a sacred relationship. That is not what adultery is, biblically speaking. That's a big deal, I think. So this is a clip about Leviticus 18 and 20, and I would like to share it with you now. It's just a couple minutes, and then it's kind of like telling you up front what we're about to talk through. So it's kind of a fun way to go about it, I hope. A little different here today. So I hope this works. I've been having issues with my laptop today. Let me see. Is that coming through? It is. And let's see. What happens if I do that? Let's do that. Yeah. Okay. And I hope this comes through on
the final passage I would like to refer you to is the somewhat troubling chapter 18 of.
You all are not hearing that, are you? Could you hear the video that I was playing? I love this delay. I'm joking. Oh, excellent. Thank you, Ray. Okay, keep going.
Leviticus. Verse 6 is a helpful sliver of it. None of you shall approach anyone near of kin to uncover nakedness. Uncover nakedness. That's a pretty stark way to refer to having sex, isn't it? Note that in the rest of the chapter, over and over, the women on the list whose nakedness men cannot uncover are described as either the man's own blood relatives or the property of a man he's related to. Essentially all the women he would see at a family reunion. Please note, this chapter is not about which women a man can take or marry. It's about who he cannot have sex with. I like to ask my students if this is how they would teach children about healthy relationships. Don't touch her or her. That's good relationship advice. Leviticus 18 and 20 are often quoted in order to highlight the one verse in each that talks about a man not lying with a man as he does a woman. What most people do not stop to think about, though, is that both chapters make it perfectly clear that men had sex outside of marriage. Not only is the practice not being judged, Leviticus is simply laying the boundaries for it. The laws and commands.
Okay, so there's that. And yeah. Okay. So that's what we're going to talk about. Not entirely, because I do want to talk about the laws. But, how often have you heard someone focus in on 1822 and just make a mountain out of it? But they don't talk at all about the fact that there were a whole bunch of hetero dudes that needed to be told not to have sex with their daughter-in-law. Like, we're not talking about that at all. At all. And yet here it is. That's more important. That gets a crap ton more examples and delineations than the one that in context means something quite different than it does for us today. But people, all right, so let's read 18, and we may need to not read 20. We'll just see. Thank you all for chiming in about letting me know that you could, so that you could hear me while I was doing the playing of that. So chapter 18 of Leviticus. Again, what is the book of Leviticus? All right. So briefly, notice the name Levi, right? There's a whole history here too, right? Initially, Aaron, Moses' right-hand man and brother, right, was supposed to be the head of the priestly people. And well, the chapter of 32 of Exodus shows us a reason why we're going to change from it being only Aaron's lineage to any of the people, any of the men, the men of the tribe of Levi can be priests. And so you have this horrific story of Moses telling people to pick up their swords, men, pick up your swords and go kill everybody because you've just been doing this thing that you weren't supposed to do, which they actually didn't know they weren't supposed to do yet, but that's beside the point. So is it Aaron is from the tribe of Levi. So is it only Aaron's descendants, or is it any of the Levites who get to be, and their descendants who get to be priests? And this is actually still an issue to this day for some groups of Jews. Okay. That is just to say, when you see Leviticus, we think priestliness, some form of like the issues of ritual purity or impurity. And that is not about having dirty hands. It's about whether or not you are ritually clean or pure, meaning whether or not you're allowed to be present in the community or present in the worship space. And very fascinating article that I stumbled across as I was writing my book about marriage in the Bible, What Do the Texts Say, was written by a Hebrew Bible scholar talking about how interesting it is that there's like a subset of scholarship on the purity codes in Leviticus, and they're all about men and when they're ritually pure or not to be priests, and then also about the community, people in general, men and women. Again, please forgive the binary there. What makes them ritually pure or not. But this issue throughout scripture of women being sexually impure is not talked about in terms of purity laws, which is really fascinating to me. I hadn't stopped to think about it till I read that article. I'm like, oh, that's a really interesting point. And there's a whole like thing about purity in terms of ritual, but nobody makes a big deal about all the shaming and whatever going on about sexual impurity. I'm sorry, we're 25 minutes in and I'm just now starting, but we've been covering some important content. Okay, here we go. Book of Leviticus, which is lots of laws about how they're to live, both the community, people in the community in general. So this is where you get the kosher food laws. This is where you get the laws talking about how to slaughter an animal because God loves the scent of a barbecue. All of that, right? Flinging the blood all over the place. All of those come from Leviticus, but also what priests are supposed to do in order to do their role correctly. So, chapter 18. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, I am the Lord your God." It is kind of weird to think about Moses saying that, isn't it? Anyway, channeling the Lord. "You shall not do as they do in the land of Egypt, where you lived." So stop any of the practices you picked up there, right? "You shall not do as they do in the land of Canaan, to which I am bringing you," in which there are a whole bunch of people living, and I'm going to tell you to slaughter them in a minute, right? "You shall not follow their statutes. You are going to be a holy people to me," right? "My ordinances you shall observe, and my statutes you will keep, following them. I am the Lord your God. You shall keep my statutes and my ordinances. By doing so, one shall live. I am the Lord." So how many different times were we just told to do that? Right? Repetition is helpful for everybody. Okay? So that's the setup. Don't do the things that you used to do in Egypt. Don't do the things that people do here in Canaan that are, and now I'm going to just tell you a whole bunch of those things, and they all have to do with intimacy, right? And this is right out of the gate. "None of you shall approach anyone near of kin to uncover nakedness. I am the Lord." Uncover nakedness, as in that clip, is a fairly stark euphemism, isn't it? Perhaps take a moment to think about that, right? Not just because it's an obvious euphemism, right? But think about what you're saying about bodies and sex when your euphemism is simply about nakedness, not tenderness, not intimate touch, trust, right? Sensitivity, sensuality. It's about a naked body that you are going to then penetrate, right? What these laws tell us about ancient men and women, but the men writing this at least, how they thought about bodies, how they thought about sex, and in particular for those who were hetero, how they thought about women as things to penetrate. Please make no mistake about it. The Hebrew Bible represents sex as something that dominant men do to other people. It is not a beautiful, sacred thing that people do after they pledge themselves to each other. Now, it is a beautiful thing that's talked about in the book Song of Songs, although that's also at a very lustful level, which is also I'm fine with, but it's also sad to me that it doesn't go any deeper than like looks. So I just want to be clear. None of you shall approach anyone near of kin to uncover nakedness. Just that. All right, here we go. "You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father, which is the nakedness of your mother. She is your mother. You shall not uncover her nakedness." Okay, so don't disrespect your father by having sex with your mother. She belongs to him. She is his nakedness, right? I mean, the possession here, right, is I don't want you to miss. I'm pretty sure most of you are not going to miss it, but I still want to say it because the way they thought about it is central. The way they thought about sex and sexuality and sexual experiences is absolutely central to the conversation about marriage. But the whole point of my filter for this live stream series is about sex, right? And what the relationships we call marriage and the other, which it doesn't apply today, fortunately. Well, it does when it talks about bestiality. Okay. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's woman. My English says wife. The nakedness of your father's woman. It is the nakedness of your father. We just kind of said that, but we're saying it in a different way. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your sister, your father's daughter, or your mother's daughter, whether born at home or born abroad. So whether or not she's your full sister or half sister, right? Don't do it. Just don't go there. It's a good idea. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your son's daughter or of your daughter's daughter, for their nakedness is your own nakedness. Now we're just being weird. Now we're just being odd. Their body is your body. Sure, I get that, right? They came from your loins because you're the man, not actually from you fully. The woman did the whole gestation thing. It's a lot of work. Possession and nakedness. I'm just going to keep going. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's woman's daughter, begotten by your father, since she is your sister. So we've got half sister for sure there, right? You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's sister. She is your father's flesh. She's your aunt. You just don't, you want a good aunt. You don't want a, booty call aunt. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your mother's sister. I wonder if anyone's going to comment on that. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your mother's sister, for she is your mother's flesh. So do we really need someone to tell us that extended family, like immediate and just first step or two removed family, they share too much with your mom or your dad? Is that the reason? Is that their understanding the best they could do? Is it people had the ick factor and that's why they had the ick factor? Was there some sort of like human unconscious understanding of genetic, craziness that happens if you're not careful? Like, I don't know, but it seems weird to me. And maybe I'm just really off on that, but it just feels weird to me, the way it's being justified. Don't have sex with your aunt because she's too closely related to your mom. Okay, right? Like, there's so much more to say. I mean, I just want to highlight that somebody needed to be told this more than once. More than one person, more than one hetero dude needed these instructions, okay? I just want you to think about that for a while. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your mother's sister. She's your mother's flesh. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's brother. That is, you shall not approach his woman. My English is wife. She is your aunt. So she's not a part of your flesh, but she's close to someone who is a part of your flesh. So don't do that, right? You shall not uncover the nakedness of your daughter-in-law. She is your son's woman. My English is wife. You shall not uncover her nakedness. I mean, this is all really sound advice, honestly, right? It's just inappropriate. You shall not uncover the naked. It's just the language. It's just the language and what the language tells us, right? You shall not uncover the nakedness of your brother's woman. My English says wife. It is your brother's nakedness. That's your brother's piece of flesh. You shall not uncover the nakedness of a woman and her daughter. You don't get to go on a date with a woman and then later date her daughter. That's just icky, according to them. And I might think so too, but that's my business, not something I need to enforce upon someone else. Right? Anyway. And you shall not take her son's daughter. That would be, a granddaughter, right? Or her daughter's daughter, so the granddaughter of the woman you banged the first time, right? Or uncover her nakedness. They are your flesh. It is depravity. They actually got some things confused there, which is really interesting that I hadn't noticed that before. And you shall not take a woman as a rival to her sister. My English, that actually doesn't say wife. As a woman, as a rival to her sister, uncovering her nakedness while her sister is still alive. Of course, this is in Leviticus, and it's post the story of Jacob, whether or not the story of Jacob had fully been fleshed out at this point, pun intended, because he took two sister wives, right? Simultaneously within a week of each other, not just, oops, I fell in love with someone else. No, right? You got to have sex with Leah. Oops, sorry. We'll just work, give Leah her honeymoon of a week with you, and then you can go into this one too. Just work for her too. Yeah. You shall not approach a woman to uncover her nakedness while she is in her menstrual uncleanness. I don't get that. Can someone please explain that to me? I get it, really. It's the blood thing. But, especially for women who have pretty intense cramps, it can actually be like a massage. It can actually be relief. It can be comforting, helpful. There is the fact that it's already lubricated. Like, take advantage of that. I don't know. Like, get over yourself. I don't know. We put up with all kinds of stuff coming from you. Come on. All right. Sorry, not sorry. You shall not have sexual relations. Oh, interesting. Now we're calling it sexual relations with your kinsman's woman. My English says wife. And defile yourself with her. Why are they using defilement language when it comes to sex? Why do any of us have negative, dirty kinds of euphemisms when it comes to sex, by the way? Doing the nasty. What kinds of euphemisms do you know of for sex, right? Have you thought about that? Have you thought about what the euphemism that you might hear or use? No judgment. Where did it come from? What is it saying about sex? Even if it's playful, what's being said about it? What's kind of a commentary is being made about this element of human experience that not everyone wants to experience, but many people, the majority do. Majority are not asexual. So this is a part of human experience. Why are we calling it that? And don't get me wrong, I'm not in favor of, sleeping with other people's spouses. That's not my point here. My point is the language we're using to talk about bodies and humans in general, that the act of having sex is defiling in some way, ought to be anathema to people. It ought to be the thing that says, yeah, I'm not here for that. I'm out of here, right? Anytime you talk about sex that way, that should be the cue to leave the room, in my opinion. You shall not give any of your offspring to sacrifice them to Molech. So this is right on the tail of, right? You shall not have sexual relations with your kinsman's woman and defile yourself with her. You shall not give any of your offspring to sacrifice them to Molech. I'm looking at the footnotes here. And so profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. You shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It is an abomination. You shall not have sexual relations with any animal and defile yourself with it, nor shall any woman give herself to an animal to have sexual relations with it. It is perversion. I'm going to keep reading and we'll come back to discuss those last ones. Do not defile yourselves in any of these ways, for by all these practices, the nations I am casting out before you have defiled themselves. Thus the land became defiled. I have a small section in one of my chapters in the book about the connection between women and land and possession. Thus the land became defiled because these nations were having defiling sexual relations. And I punished it for its iniquity, and the land vomited out its inhabitants. I have people in my classrooms all the time who have such negative and almost demonic characterizations of the Canaanite people that they see nothing wrong with Joshua, where they're told to go in and slaughter everybody. They see nothing wrong with it because they've been declared awful through these scriptures so many times and in so many ways. So a positivistic reading with these scriptures leads people to think these awful things about other people. But you shall keep my statutes and my ordinances and commit none of these abominations, either the citizen or the alien who resides among you. For the inhabitants of the land who were before you committed all of these abominations, and the land became defiled. Otherwise, the land will vomit you out for defiling it. The land is defiled when you are sexually immoral, according to these lines, as it vomited out the nation that was before you. For whoever commits any of these abominations shall be cut off from their people. So keep my charge not to commit any of these abominations that were done before you, and do not defile yourselves by them. I am the Lord your God. What's interesting to me is that people tend to associate abomination with one of those verses, not with all 23, or 17, because we have the first 5 verses are just, so 18 verses of what not to do. So 18 different abominations in this chapter. And normally only verse 22 gets associated with that label, abomination. Are you tracking with me? So there's that it is clear in lots of different ways when you want to be careful, track with things carefully, that it's not just this one where a man lies with a male as he does a woman, which is all kinds of fascinating nuances there. But all of them, and I want to go on record saying I approve of calling it an abomination when you force yourself on an animal. I just can't even imagine giving myself up to an animal. That even saying that makes me cringe, and concerned, very concerned. I'm a favor of calling that something awful. Abuse of power. We could call it all kinds of things aside from concerning and you need some help. Like, yeah, don't do that. Okay, let's talk about this. You shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It is an abomination. Why is it an abomination for a man at this point in time to lie with a male the way they lie with a woman? Detestable. Yep. Mike Balkansky. Yes, absolutely. Those aren't necessarily 144,000 eunuchs, though. Those are 144,000 men who have not defiled themselves with women. Yes, that is right. And that is the one time that the word virgin has to be qualified because it's being applied to men. So in that passage in Revelation chapter 14, it actually says male virgins, whereas every other time you see the word virgin in the Bible, if it's just by itself, you are to assume that's a female. Have you thought about that before? I think I've said this on a different podcast, but let me say it again. The word virgin is the only word that is assumed to be female. It's the only label for women aside from mother, woman, why, but like virgin is assumed to be a female. You have to designate when it's a male. Priest is assumed to be a male. There aren't even priestesses even though there are, but that's beside the point. What am I making my point? It's this thing about NBA, WNBA. NBA, of course, is National Basketball Association, right? Like, of course, that's the men. So WNBA, because it's the women's version of the official, right? Right? Virgin, created specifically referring to females. Okay. Why is it an abomination for a man to lie with a male as with a woman? So within their framework of talking about sexuality, having sexual experiences, they so many places tell us that they thought about sex as something that a man does to another person. Predominantly in the language of the Bible, it is they are doing it to a female. Yes, that is true. And so, but it's his job, his action to do to a female. It is not something they engage in together. Okay. All kinds of, and so when people talk about the active and the passive roles, I know that you all know about this. So many of you know about this language, but I want to be clear about it because it's very literal. In other words, the assumption and the belief, and therefore the practice for many, I don't question that lots of people broke out of that mold and just had a great time, both of them, very active, right? I don't question that, right? But what's being described is a female is a naked body, uncovering nakedness, that a male penetrates and does a thing to, okay? And the concept of the woman being passive, a passive receptacle or recipient, receiving, he is doing or giving, she is taking in and receiving, she is expected to be the passive object. He's expected to be the active doer. And that is not just a social script, it is also built into their honor and shame system. The more dominant you can be, the more of a, quote, air quotes here if you're just listening, man you are, if you are more virile, more stronger, and so penetrating another, being the active partner, the dominant partner, that is all a part of defining a person's masculinity or a person's maleness. And I have a question here I'm just going to share. Ever consider going live with Robert Price on these issues? I haven't considered it. I would go live with people. I would consider going live with a lot of different people. I actually don't know Robert Price. I feel like Googling him because maybe I do know who he is, but I can't pull up any references right now. I don't know if there's more you could say there. Is there some of his work that you're thinking of? Do we agree and you'd like to see us have a conversation about it? Do we disagree and you'd like to see how we would exchange about that? I'm just curious, but that's just my response to your question. I don't know. I feel like I should know who that is, but I don't, just to be honest. Why is it an abomination for a male to treat another male as he treats a woman? This is part of the question, right? Do not lie with a male as you do a woman. Do not treat another man. So there are many different possibilities, or perhaps several that are all working together here. Do not treat another man or a male, a male human, the way you would treat a woman. Okay, this is about defining masculinity. This is about honor and shame systems and constructs around identity. Absolutely, it's about procreation. That can't procreate. So don't waste your semen. Again, I'm going to say it here. I've said it several times before. It cracks me up that the people writing the laws about not wasting semen presumably knew there was plenty more where that came from, and they still felt the need to say that you don't waste your semen. Like, did they not know that into your 90s, the dudes can be like, what? Come on. Anyway, yes, it's about procreation. We need to grow as a nation, but I think it is in this case, I really, the longer I spend with these passages and with humans today who are hung up on this, I do see it in part as this nation building issue. We need to be procreative. We need to build our numbers. I do get that. And we do have that reference in Genesis 38, right? The story of Onan, who wouldn't populate his brother's family. So his brother and he are struck dead his brother's struck dead because he did something evil, of course. And then Onan's struck dead because he doesn't want to populate his brother's family. But regardless of the reason he's struck dead in this moment of not populating, right? And So while I do see the connection, because that's important to the people of Israel to be able to grow so they can be a large nation, so that the Lord can cause them to be a blessing to other nations, I really deeply believe that it is more about an ancient, what we would label today, homophobia. And what's so fascinating to me about homophobia, specifically focused on males, I realize there's homophobia focused on females, but I want to talk about this in terms of this context, because what we're saying is men don't go penetrate another man. That's an abomination. Why? Don't treat another man like you would treat a woman. That's belittling and offensive. Why would a man want to be treated like a woman? That's demeaning to a man who has this privilege because he's a man. You don't want to be associated with that realm of feminizing a man. All the different kinds of things. And what's at the heart of homophobia that's directed at males is misogyny. The idea of treating another man like a woman, the idea of a man willing to be treated like a woman, that's offensive and abominable. Like, just no, we'll have nothing to do with that, So here's the thing, folks. I do see an element of what we call homophobia here, and I'm not okay with that element of homophobia. Just like I'm not okay with the passages that talk about women as property. The fact that this whole chapter is calling sexual intimacy uncovering nakedness. I'm not okay with any of it. It is all outdated, not just this one that is predominantly fueled by a fear of something different. When people do not understand a thing, they often, if they're not taught that it's okay to learn new things and to encounter new things, they often are scared of it and start throwing names at it or treating it terribly. Are you all tracking with me? The ancient tribalistic mentality here is understandable, and it needs to go. Right? So I need to be clear that, right, this is the same thing as people today who just say, ew, that's two men kissing or whatever. They aren't used to seeing that. That's not a thing that's been a part of their whatever. It's not, they've not thought about it. They've just not experienced humanity enough to understand that's just, who cares who wants to kiss? But it looks different. It is different than what they've seen. It goes against the script they've seen. And if they've been read stories with all hetero families and there's, and all the pictures and things and blah, 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 right? If it's all about happy families that, mother and father and blah, blah, 2.5 kids, it goes really deep and it starts very early. And all of these verses, not just 1822, but all of them highlight what ancient men thought about sex, what they thought about women, which was not much and very demeaning. Okay? I don't want that anymore either. But it permeates the entire Christian Bible. There are moments when something reaches up above it, and gives us a beautiful moment of women being empowered or being strong and being honored and noted and all that stuff, right? Like Samson's mom getting to have the message, and her man was like, hey, I want some of the story. I want some of the scoop. And then he was like, no, she's got it. I already told her she's got it. So here's the thing. I would like the people who get so worked up about 1822 to get at least half as worked up about the other 17 verses that objectify and objectify women, make them objects that are being penetrated, that are being fucked, not that are getting to have sex with their partner. I would like them to get half as angry about those and talk about those just as much, because we've got two versions of it in Leviticus. Thank you very much. The men needed it. And there's 17 times more content. No, that's not true, because there's one about not having sex when she's on her period and not having sex with animals. Two verses on that. So I'm appreciative of that, right? But you get my point. There's more than 10 times as much content about hetero dudes knowing where and with whom. Don't go stick it in her. Like, it's unbelievably immature. I want to say puerile. Like, it is just gross language about human interactions. All of it needs to be changed in the way we talk about it and think about it. This verse 22, right along with the others, because verse 22 comes out of fear and hatred and a misunderstanding of human sexuality. The Christian Bible has significantly influenced what people, both Jews and Christians, so the First Testament for Jews and the two primary testaments for Christians, believe about sexuality, even though human realities do not live up to that. That's a near quote from my book. The Bible has taught people what to believe about sexuality, even though human realities do not back it up. Okay? This is among the verses that are misinforming people about human sexuality. I just want to be really honest about that, right? The other piece and follow-up to that is that this isn't about marriage. This chapter is not about marriage. Chapter 20 is not about marriage. It's about which women a man can have sex with. These are not using take language, which is the Hebrew version, the primary Hebrew language way of saying what we call marry. So when I do this whole thing, like my English says wife, but I'm reading it and I can say woman, but my English says wife. That's because the Hebrew says woman. The Hebrew says man, not husband. The Hebrew says take, not marry. But here in chapter 18 and 20 of Leviticus, it's not saying you don't get to take this woman. It's saying you don't get to have sex with her. They weren't concerned about marriage here. They were concerned about with which women a man was going to go step out and have sex with. I think I said with twice. Are you all tracking? This isn't relationship advice. This is putting the boundaries up around which women a man could go out and have sex with. It is making it absolutely clear that there are men having sex outside of marriage. And it's not just that, well, it's happening and nobody, God isn't saying it's a bad idea, but God can't speak up about everything. No. We have the boundaries being laid for it twice. You don't get to tell me that this is just descriptive. This is very much laying some boundaries for men who are going to go do it. Just make sure you don't do it with the wrong woman. That I would like people who are so worked up over 22 to get just half as worked up about this reality of the other 15 verses around it. And then we can all just, I'm going to say go to bed, as in like the day is over, All right. I haven't read this yet, so I'm going to pull this up, see what's going on here. I'm surprised you're not aware of Robert Price. Here's the thing. There are lots of men who have been on, there are lots of men who've been on Myth Vision who do fine work or whatever. I could have a very long conversation. I'm not going to go public about scholars in my field, but Robert Price is not among the people I've read. And there are very good reasons for that. Okay. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you for your super chat. Maybe you and I should have a conversation separately, but that is, I could recommend a whole bunch of biblical scholars that I think you'd enjoy. I've said too much already. I'm not going to read 20 because it's the same thing. So thank you for being here. I really do appreciate it. I want to remind you, if you weren't here at the very beginning for the first 20 minutes, I'm going live with Tim Whitaker on Thursday. So Thursday, August 10, same time, 3 o'clock, back to my regular time, I should say. And he's with the New Evangelicals, and we're going to respond to, I think I still have it in my copy, so let me pull it up. We're going to respond to a conversation that Sean McDowell, the son of Josh McDowell, had with Preston Sprinkle, who just came out with a book which is non-affirming of same-sex marriage. And it's his version of how to make sense of the Bible. What does the Bible say about same-sex marriage? The Bible is not affirming in his take on it. And I understand, I think, for the most part, his take. And Tim and I are going to discuss points from their conversation. Let me share that image with you real quick for those of you who missed it at the beginning. And so 3 o'clock Eastern, Tim Whitaker and I are going to go live to respond to these two guys' conversation. They had an hour and a half conversation. We're going to pull up some clips and very respectfully, as much as we can, respond to what they said and the claims they've made about what the Bible says about marriage. And it does for them, as it does for me, it does revolve around, what does the Bible say marriage is? It's just that they happen to define it very differently than I do. And I find it fascinating that in this instance, two biblical scholars, Preston Sprinkle and I, have put a lot of time and life into studying the scriptures, and we have very different ways in terms of how we come out on the other side of the conversation. So it should be interesting. So you can find their original live stream pretty easily, I'm sure, if you feel like watching that. But anyway, so that's what we're doing on Thursday. Instead of my regular Storytime Live, we'll do a live stream with the New Evangelicals, Tim Whitaker, on that topic. So thank you for being here. Those of you who are here, it warms my heart, truly. Thank you for the chat. Thank you for sorry, Constellation Pegasus, was that comment about what I said? Your comment? You're done with this? You're done with what? I feel like I missed something here. I hope you mean, but when you say far left bullshit, I'm done with this. It concerns me that you might actually be referring to me. Got a lot to say about, you're asking me something publicly that I didn't want to respond to. So I should have just said I didn't want to respond to it, I guess. There are a lot of, by the way, there are a lot of New Testament scholars you can learn a lot from. And a lot of New Testament scholars who are doing much more, there are a lot of New Testament scholars, let's put it that way, who are on a spectrum of scholarship in terms of the kinds of things they engage. What I have found to be relatively true across the board, and this is not, it is an unusual male scholar who is who's aware of issues of sexism in biblical texts and this field of scholarship. And so there are a lot of males who mean well and think that they are feminists, and that's okay, but I don't agree with them, or I think that there's some pretty big things they're missing because they're not aware of the sexism element. And I'm not talking about price here. I'm just talking about biblical scholarship. There are females who are biblical scholars who are sexist. You can look at some of the stuff I published at some points that my own issues show up, and I had to reverse my stance the more I learned, or whatever. Okay. So I learned from other scholars besides Robert Price, and other scholars who I think are more complex, and it is a multi-layered, very complex world. And when ideologies are front and center in everything you publish because it's related to the Bible. This is not true in the same way that it is true in other fields. So there's a lot to navigate. I do know who he is now that I look at his face. I don't think I've read anything of his. There's a lot to choose from, and I choose to read scholars who I respect, who I know, who have taught me over the years. I could have written most of the positivistic scholarship that is out there because I believed it. That's why I went to seminary and PhD work, is I needed some information to get me beyond what I thought. And so it is so much bigger than you realize. So I'm going to just, going to leave it at that. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate you. And I'm looking forward to Thursday and whenever I get to see you next. So thanks for being here. Thanks for keeping it real. And I'll see you soon.